Ladies and gentlemen, time to set the stage again for another panel discussion. And yes, a humble request again, please let's keep our questions so that we can try accommodating as many questions as possible, and so that I don't disappoint a large number of audience over here as I keep interrupting. Moving on, we're going to have 4 of our panel members joining in, including our session moderator, as they come together and discuss on financing and FDI in affordable housing. Let's also meanwhile set the stage, and meanwhile let's also keep your tweets coming using hashtag #ETLandSummit. So that leaves us with another 2 more interesting panel discussions as well as a keynote session for the entire evening. But first up, we'll get started with our next panel discussion. So may I also inform you all that we have with us Mr. Girish Bhagat, Vice Chairman of IndiaNivesh Financial Advisors, and also the Vice President of AUM-LAI, who would be moderating this session. And firstly, I'd like to invite him on the stage as well. He would be setting the tone and also introduce the topic to all of you. And meanwhile, we'd also like to invite our next set of panel members joining Mr. Girish Bhagat on the stage. I'd like to invite Mr. Rajesh Krishnan, the founder and CEO of Brick Eagle, to please come on stage. May I further invite Mr. Mohan Natarajan, Director, Fortune Financial and Equities Services. May I please invite Dr. Ramki Srinivasan, the founder and CEO of Ecolubes and 2° Solutions, and Professor Chandrahas, Deshpande, Economist. We just got done with a fantastic presentation. Can we have a round of applause to welcome all of our speakers again? Wonderful. On that note, Mr. Bhagat, over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. We take up for discussions financing and FDI and affordable housing. Affordable housing. Before I give a brief introduction of my co-panelists, I just want to take 1 minute. One of the most topical topics being discussed and debated, and a most critical element in the drive of the government in the central level and at each state level. We've heard the minister yesterday talk about affordable housing. We heard almost every panelist talking about affordable housing, but it has not taken off. For the first time in this budget, affordable housing was given some semblance of reality so that it can move on. It has been given the infrastructure status. What it means, we will debate a little later. So what we want to look at, what have been the impediments in affordable housing? Can it be funded? Clearly, it cannot be funded only by the government missions. In the room of PPP, it has to be funded by private capital. What are the impediments in the private capital? Can this private capital be only domestic, or will it be international? We'll need to have international. So what needs to be done to bring forth international capital and domestic capital, both equity and debt? How we can afford? We have not seen any large groups getting into affordable housing. What are the issues there? And what issues can we need to resolve to make affordable housing a reality so that people in the urban and the rural space get a right of roof over their head? This is the things that various other aspects doing. With me, I have a galaxy of experts coming from diverse fields and eminent in their own profession. To my left is Mr. Rajesh Krishnan, who is the founder and CEO of Black Eagle, which is the largest aggregator of affordable housing. His mission is to deliver 1 million affordable homes. To my extreme left is Mr. Mohan Natarajan. He's been an ex-colleague. We've been partners and ex-colleagues together for many, many years. He's an authority on investment banking, debt financing, and various other aspects, and he's done incredible work for the industry. So we look forward from his inputs on how the financing is done. To my right is Dr. Ramki Srinivasan, CEO of 2° Solutions. Ramki comes with a wealth of experience in the venture capital space and private equity space, particularly relating to sustainable technologies. Sustainable technologies is an element very strongly embedded inside the affordable housing component. To my extreme right is my colleague from AUM-LAI, Dr. Chandrahas Deshpande, who's an economist, formerly was with MEDC, and now is with academia world. Please give a round of applause for this distinguished panel to my right and to my left. let me begin with Rajesh. Sorry, I will begin with Dr. Deshpande. Let us request you to give us a brief perspective on the FDI policies, in particularly in as much as it relates to affordable housing.
Thank you, Girish, and thank you for the organizers for having me here, and I am privileged to share the panel with such eminent co-panelists. I have taken an easy way out for me, being the only economist on the panel, is that I'll try to give some kind of a macroeconomic backdrop so that the later on the actual experts in affordable housing can have their say. As all of us are aware, India is again on the move with clocking one of the highest growth rates. And one of the principal ingredients, not just in the recent years, but in the post-liberalization past 25 years or so, has been our emphasis on getting foreign direct investment, not just for its associated technology and other aspects, but also to contribute actively in our whole development process. So what we have seen over the last 25 years is that progressively the FDI policy regime has been liberalized. Things are moving fast into automatic approval mode, and also simultaneously there has been a relaxation on the ceilings or caps. Whatever was, say, earlier 51% is now 76, is also now 100, etc., etc. We don't have the time and necessity to go into that. Consequently, what has happened is India, as all of us are aware, is a very hot FDI favorite or a favorite investment destination of the entire world. In fact, the latest UNCTAD report tells us, of World Investment Report, that in a regime of falling worldwide, mind you, falling worldwide global FDI investment, India is one of the few countries, and certainly one of the few developing countries, where on a year-to-year basis FDI is rising, and in the current year we will be crossing $50 billion of FDI in the current year. So that's kind of the perspective what we should keep in mind. Now coming back quickly to the affordable, not such as affordable housing really, but 8% of all the FDI which has come in the last 16 years, of which the disaggregated data is available officially. Last 15-16 years we have got about $350 billion investment FDI, of which about 8% has gone into the segment called construction, which also includes residential construction and hosts of other construction activities. And other than this, more important is, other than the services sector, which includes banking, finance, R&D and host of other services, construction is the second most important sector as far as foreign direct receipt or accrual of foreign direct investment is concerned in the last about 15-20 years. So clearly, and as our chairman mentioned, and as all of us are aware, clearly with the policy regime towards construction activities in general and affordable housing, the policy regime becoming more and more investor friendly, we can certainly look forward to far more FDI into construction sector in general and affordable housing in particular. And I'll just end my initial remarks by saying that, however, while the experts would debate the nitty-gritties, I'll just say one thing, that FDI in affordable housing, like FDI into any other segment in the economy, will obviously be inextricably linked with the ease of doing business. Just as in any other sector, housing sector is also full of procedures, formalities, regulations and rules. So to the extent we can ease them, simplify them, the better it would be for foreign direct investment and for the actual projects inviting foreign direct investment in affordable housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Chandrahas. So, good perspective in terms of how much money is flown in. Yes, India indeed is one of the highest, I think second or third largest FDI aggregator. It has gone into construction 8%, but how we can channelize this into affordable homes, we'll take it up with Rajesh. Why don't you give us your perspective? What needs to be done to really kickstart this initiative, to give it a shape, a real shape, from a policy point of view, from a financing point of view, and achieving your dream of 1 million aggregate of affordable homes?
Thanks a lot. You hear me? Hello? You hear me? Hello? Yes? Hello?
No, I don't think the sound is carrying.
Hello? Check, check. Hello? Hello?
No, use the other one.
Hello. This is working.
Hello? Yeah, thanks a lot. Perhaps I can start by putting things in perspective from affordable housing sector. The government says India needs 60 million homes to achieve housing for all. Even if we were to get there in 10 years, we need to produce at least 6 million homes per year. If you put an average price tag of 10 lakhs per unit, we got to produce at least $100 billion worth of homes every year. And to do that, we need at least 20% of that should be project finance. So we need $20 billion of project finance every year, year on year. So first of all, we're talking about a large sum of money being made available to achieve housing for all. But then the other challenge, which is less spoken about, is that this sector is highly fragmented. Today, 95% of the supply comes from local small developers across the country. There are thousands of them producing these homes. And I think that will continue to be the case even in the future. So about 80-90% of the homes will be produced by small local developers. And these projects are doing like 5 acres, about 600 units. So which means that their funding requirement is also about 10 crore rupees on an average. So in addition to the fact that we need a lot of money, the fact is we need to be able to distribute that across tens of thousands of projects. So this is like a big challenge. Now, the fact is that our financial institutions today are not geared up to this. I mean, banks traditionally were never focused on affordable housing. Why is that the case? No fault of theirs. The fact is they all had 10% cap on real estate, and affordable housing was real estate. And they had already lent to a lot of the premium projects, and essentially they didn't have appetite for the smaller local developers who were doing affordable housing. The first good news is, thanks to the infrastructure status, affordable housing is not real estate. That is the first good news, which means banks can actually look at affordable housing projects now, which they were not doing earlier. Having said that, I don't expect banks to jump at it and start lending to affordable housing sector. I think we got to declare affordable housing PSL if you want to really get money in quantum into this sector. See, if the fact is today, if a bank lends to a home buyer when he's purchasing a home worth 35 lakhs, that home loan qualifies as PSL. Whereas a project loan to the same project doesn't qualify as PSL. And today the challenge is supply, not demand. So most of our incentives in the past were geared towards demand and not supply. I think it's about time we change that. I think project loans for affordable housing projects should qualify as PSL if banks were to lend. But that still doesn't solve for the equity requirement of these projects. The fact is, the sector still needs at least $10 billion of equity year on year. And that to me is like a big opportunity for large institutions to jump into. We happen to be one of the institutions set up in that we call Brick Eagle, but I think there is room for at least another 100. So I would encourage all of you to try.
Thank you so much. Let's put this into perspective. $100 billion of investment is required in affordable homes every year. $350 billion have come as FDI over last 15 years. This year we are aggregating about 65 billion a year. 8% goes into construction. Okay, possibly in affordable home as of now, FDI is near zero. is a huge, huge, huge gap. Is this dream a really realizable dream? Can only depend upon domestic capital formation. I would now like to ask Mohan. Mohan, what do you think are the real room of domestic capital formation going into this area, both in form of equity and in debt? And what needs to be done to de-risk this business so that there is an appetite for debt providers?
Yeah. Thanks, Girish. See, I would like to just take maybe a minute or two in just sort of narrating to the audience at large over here as to what are the challenges which a typical capital provider faces when he is looking at providing capital to real estate. And here I'm not differentiating right now between affordable and the so-called unaffordable housing, as they call it. Okay, I just include all in one bucket. Okay, I think one of the major challenges which any financier or any provider of capital here in India faces is that when the developer comes to the financier for providing capital, right, he would ideally like to have the financier right at the beginning when he is seeking to buy land. Because in most cases, what happens is that land is a predominant cost of a project, a real estate project. Okay, the construction cost is, in most cases, far lower than the cost of the land. So the land has to be purchased, then only the project can get started. Okay. Now, given our own challenges with the approval cycles in terms of land, okay, right, the capital providers are not very comfortable providing capital at this point of time. Okay, they would want to wait till all the approvals are in place, the land titles are clear, the approvals are in place, and subsequently only they start providing capital to a real estate project. Okay, so that becomes one challenge. Okay. The second thing which we see which becomes a hindrance to provision of capital here in India is that, I don't know, maybe as fellow countrymen, we all like to keep hoarding, right? I still come across a lot of people who, a lot of developers who say, look, give me capital. So I ask them, what do you require capital for? So they say, look, what we want to do is that we want to start constructing. We'll sell 10% of our flats or our houses right now. We'll keep the balance for a later date when the uptick happens in the prices of the apartments or houses or what they are. Okay. Now, automatically what happens is that, therefore, the tendency for most of the realtors is in terms of hoarding things. There is no, in affordable housing, one does not expect that you will keep hoarding and actually, wait for a better date when you're going to get a better price. What you're looking for is that a project taken up, completed quickly, move on to the next project, again take it up, complete quickly and move on and so on. So the turnaround time has to be much shorter than what the real estate people are, sort of mentally geared to think about. Okay. The third thing which becomes a real challenge in terms of raising capital, okay, over here, is that invariably when you go to providers of capital, except the nationalized banks, okay, they will come back and tell you that, look, we want to provide capital to real estate, and all these numbers which have been thrown around are mostly only geared to these 4 or 5 or 6 big metros. Okay. People don't want to look beyond Bombay or Delhi, NCR, or Calcutta, Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Ahmedabad, maybe some 5 or 6 names like this in terms of providing capital. And the unfortunate problem is that most of the affordable housing is coming up in areas outside of these. Okay, they don't come up in these cities. They come up in smaller towns, smaller cities. I was hearing the presentation on Buldana and so on. Those are the places where affordable housing come up more often. Okay, and these providers of capital do not really have the bandwidth or the wherewithal to go to these smaller places and provide capital. Okay, so that is one more challenge. And the last challenge is that willy-nilly, and I do not know why it has happened like that. Okay, because of maybe the way FDI is coming into the country and their expectations. I think most providers of capital in the FDI segment expect that the return on the capital that they provide is fairly high. I mean, and you're looking at something like upwards of 15% when they provide capital to you for a project. Okay. Now, at these kind of returns, it becomes very difficult for an affordable housing project to sustain and be able to deliver. Okay. So these are the sort of challenges which we face when we go to raise capital. So this is my introduction. As we discuss further, we'll get into more areas of where capital can be sourced from. But these remain challenges for pretty much any kind of capital which is sought to be raised in this sector. Thank you.
One interesting points raised that you have actually raised the point of land cost being a large proportion and how we can segregate, if we can segregate the land cost out of the whole proportion. Mm-hmm. Let me share a little my experience in Europe, what's happening in Europe. In the European world, affordable housing is one of the large social housing, as I call it, is the largest attractor of private capital. The simple, fundamental fact behind that being that in the social housing projects, they use the latest technologies, The land is available, possibly subsidized by the government, I'm not so sure. But the projects are completed in less than 2 years, between 1 and 2 years. That means an investor's time frame of investing in and investing out, an investment out is within 1 to 2 years. So he completely de-risks of any other industrial project where the gestation could be 5 years, 7 years, or even 10 years. So Rajesh, over to you once again before I rock it back to Dr. Janki. But is there any points that we can connect, because how to segregate land out, because land has become expensive. Affordable housing only in tier 2, tier 3 cities is not a solution, because you need affordable housing in cities, in the large metros as well.
Exactly right. I guess it's not my day with Mike today. Hello? And no, you're exactly right. Affordable housing is an urbanization problem. Homes are needed in the cities, while, of course, tier 3 cities are also seeing their share of migration. The fact is that the problem is highest in cities like Bombay and NCR. So we can't shy away from the fact. And the fact is there is a lot of supply of affordable housing coming in Bombay as well. It's just that it's in the outskirts, and I wish that we had better transport infrastructure, which is what we were speaking about earlier in the day. Coming to your point on social housing, that's a very important point. I do think there is a lot of capital available from social impact investors, which is actually available to come into India. The development finance institutions have been here for decades, trying to invest in affordable housing, including the IFCs and CDCs of the world. But it's not found its way down to the people who are actually doing affordable housing because of the points I raised earlier. It's a very fragmented market. Most of this money goes into the top names, the Tatas and Mahindras, and it just stops after that because of various other governance concerns. So clean capital is available, but it's not found its way in. And I think the onus is on us to actually create investable assets for these investors so we attract that capital.
Thank you. I just move now to another aspect of it. Again, drawing my experiences from the European world. Capital is an issue in social housing across the globe. Advents of private capital in European context have happened only recently, in the last few years, simply because other opportunities of investment have dried up there. What they have done in the European side is they have taken the utility side, or whether it's water, whether it's water harvesting, water treatment, recycling of water, energy, whether it's solar, wind power, etc. In the European side, what they've done is they have spun them away from a social housing project, bought them into an aggregator of the technologies there, and that is separately priced as pay-as-you-go concept on a use basis. Therefore, the cost of capital of these social housing has contracted to that extent. Dr. Janki, I would like to ask you, you are a specialist in all these kind of clean technologies areas, a provider of venture capital in clean technologies area. Do you think there's a room for implementing those aspects, these policy measures in India? And also, are these practices prevalent in the United States?
Thanks, Girish. I'll quickly touch on broadly where technology can play a role. If you look at housing and the construction industry, and also as the built environment, there are technologies which are available on the material side, on the construction side, and as well on the buildings themselves in terms of energy efficiency, optimization. A whole lot of technologies are available. Technology is not the constraint. It is available. If you look at alternate materials, there are cement chemistries which are cheaper to make. Cement is an extremely energy consuming product to make. So there are cements which are easier to make. There are cements which even take in CO2 as part of the construction process, so it can even capture CO2. There are local materials available in every market. This is one of the areas India can really make a huge difference. We are very good in using our local materials. That's how construction was, in terms of how we built our olden day homes. So these materials are available for construction, which can be as simple as the sand available in a given village. We don't need red bricks everywhere. Red bricks are actually not that great from a strength perspective, but we are, very particular about the color. Fly ash bricks, do a really good job. So really looking at, how we can leverage our, local resources, how we can put that to use in our local communities is something we should look at. The challenges, I'll touch on the challenges briefly. Some of this is image. People want, I know IIT Madras, went to a village. They have a good technology to use, earthen blocks and interlocking blocks, which uses very little, cement, gives a perfectly good, house, which can be a single story or a two-story building. But people, for image or aspiration, for whatever reason, they want a cement and concrete and steel building. So that's an image issue, aspiration issue. So that is some branding thing we'll have to look at for such technologies and frugal engineering to be implemented for affordable housing outside cities. In the cities, I think it's a question of scale. There is demand aggregation you need to worry about. People all concentrated in one area. They need to have local work. But with scale, you can do a lot of things. You can do prefabricated technologies. There are technologies available which doesn't even use cement and brick. Glass fiber reinforced gypsum is one example. Again, IITs are doing a lot of work in that. So if you really look at the challenges, there is certainly cost. Some of the clean technologies are a bit more expensive, but that is addressable. There is a scale issue. How do we actually bring those European technologies to India where we need to operate at scale? And then the two issues which are particular to this industry is, this industry is very conservative. We have had the same Portland cement for 100 years or even more. So nothing really has changed. It's a way the industry thinks about it. And some of it is, really about safety, and you don't want to build a bridge with a new cement. That's all understood. But there is definitely, materials are available to give a new dimension to the industry. And the second is the image and the branding issue I talked about. So if these can be, sorted out, so solutions, technology solutions are there. It's a question of technologies with some policy and incentives for affordable housing to really to take off.
Thanks, Ramki. I move on to another point, on to you. As you were talking just before, in the context of India, where in a context of an economic environment where rental yields are lower than the cost of capital, right? Clearly, there's an incentive for a person not to own a house, but rather to stay in a rental thing. Now, if this horizon, and this is what is actually the practice in the European context, people mostly don't buy the house, they rent it out for long, long leases. But of course, it's not 11-month lease every year and you move around. It's steady, and this enforceability of exiting the person if he doesn't pay the rents. I mean, that judicial process is very simple. Do you think we should be following some of these measures and moving away from a person owning it and have a financial funds like Brick Eagle, owning the homes and providing homes on a, maybe both of you can respond to this.
Yeah, Girish, what I think is that when I look at the rental yields, I mean, take a place like Bombay, for example, when it comes to residential property, okay, rental yields are about 2 to 3%. Okay, and that doesn't quite even cover, the maintenance that you pay and all that. If you exclude that, it is even lower. Okay, and then if you actually, for the owner of the house, if he's got a mortgage, right, I mean, he's got to pay close to about 8 to 9% as his cost of capital. Okay, so from one macroeconomic framework point of view, it looks silly to actually own a home, right? I mean, you might as well just keep, renting out a home, and over a period of time, you'll actually save money by not owning a house. The only thing which cures the pitch over here in India and which, brings ownership back into focus is the fact that we have an inflative economy, and over a period of time, flat prices or the asset prices have inflated, okay? And therefore, you hear these case studies of people telling you that, oh, look, I bought this house in Pune for, 10 lakhs and today it is worth 1 crore and so on, okay? Now, maybe, if you actually compound the return over a time period, you'll find that it is not all that superlative either. But it still makes you feel that, look, I have a house which is owned by me, and therefore, I'd like to sort of own it, and, it appreciates over a period of time. Okay. But the challenges in the past have been, and may not be the challenges any longer, the challenges in the past have been that the rental acts, the rental laws in the country have been fairly loose. They have been fairly lax in implementation. They are very, very pro the tenant. They are not pro the owner, okay, in terms of being able to take repossession of his house. I mean, even today, I haven't come across instances where, it is very easy to, sort of throw a tenant out if the tenant insists on staying put in the house, by approaching courts of law. Anything which goes to courts does take its own time to resolve. Okay, so what happens in the interim is anybody's guess. Okay, so I think a framework is solidly needed, and I think states like Maharashtra and all have done part of the work in that framework. I mean, you have leave and license agreements and so on in place now. Okay, it's possible to engage or put yourself into those kind of agreements and actually rent out. Okay, so that obviously paves the way for a lot of organizations which are well capitalized to come in. Okay, take ownership of houses and actually rent them out. Okay. The challenge obviously again still remains that the cost of capital which the organization will incur in owning those houses will be higher than the rental yields. Okay. And that I really don't see an answer in the immediate future. Maybe the demand will go up over a period of time. As the demand goes up, the rental yields get pushed up. As the cost of capital in India hopefully comes down over a period of time, those two start meeting each other. Sorry.
Yep, I would like to pick on 3 points. The first, there are 6 million homes locked up inside cities in India, right, which sucks. And the only reason that is so is because of poor legal framework. Yep. And secondly, we don't have organized rental management companies in India. Let me give you a clean example, right? So we are doing a project in Ranjangaon in the outskirts of Pune. It's a MIDC. There are like a 1 lakh blue-collar workers there, and we are delivering homes at 10 lakh rupees. On the face of it, it's perfect, right? So our target audience should be able to buy these homes. But then when you look deeper, a lot of them are migrant workers from Bihar and Orissa, and what is the need for them to come and buy a home in Ranjangaon? Right? They don't see this as home. They're here for employment. They plan to get back home in a couple of years. What they really need is rental homes. And you know what? There are actually investors available who are very happy to buy these homes, only if there is a professional rental management company willing to put up the show, collect the rent, maintain these homes, and run it in a transparent fashion. Where it really gets interesting is the third point. As we just said, affordable housing is an urban problem. How do you get homes at 10 lakh, 20 lakh rupee price points inside Bombay? It's mission impossible, right? But you can address the same issue using rental homes. See, the government owns a lot of prime property inside every city in the country. And they can't sell these lands. And it's not just government, there are charitable institutions, endowments, various institutions hold very prime property in the heart of cities. And they can't sell, they can't do anything with it because they're not well capitalized. One easy thing we can think of doing is basically building rental homes on these lands. Tell the government, man, I don't want your land is yours to keep. Allow me to spend my money, construct these rental homes, I'll lease it out for 30 years. At the end of 30 years, the land and building goes back to you. This will solve a pressing social issue, and by the way, investors will make 30% IRR doing that. It's economically viable. Thanks.
Thanks, Rajesh. I take up on the last one point on the institutional framework. Over to you, Chandrahas. We've clearly seen that FDI is not going to be the only solution. Local debt is a huge issue. Banks are anyway flushed with their NPAs and they don't have a lending ability. NBFC's cost of capital is going to be very high. It's going to be a wide challenge in terms of lowering down the cost of capital. Okay. Do you think there's a need of a special institutional framework like we had in SIDB or things like that, or early days we had IDBI, of an institutional framework which addresses these problems, becomes a mass-scale raiser of capital from global sources or whatever, okay, and then injects the financial impetus required, which the private institutions, banks are not able to provide?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There is a dire need for such kind of an institutional mechanism. I don't think there is any doubt on this because of the certain complexities of financing or funding of these projects, which the other eminent co-panelists have so articulate, they have mentioned. Point is, while there is certainly a need for this institutional mechanism, its design and its delivery has to be very carefully designed. For example, whether such an institutional mechanism, how far away or close it will be from the powers that be, especially at the state government and local levels of administration, is an important issue. So I think the proposed mechanism or the desirable mechanism has to be such that it has to be equidistant from all stakeholders and truly independent in the character, manned with lot of professional expertise from various stakeholders, from law, finance, investment, technology and other aspects, which will give a holistic approach so that whoever is the domestic capital or domestic investor or foreign investor approaching this kind of a sector gets one-shop sort of solution to actually make his investments in a safe and sustainable manner.
Thanks, Chandrahas. We are running out of time. This process of discussion on this subject for half an hour is really not enough. Maybe we need a full-day workshop or half-a-day workshop to actually string together. But what has happened is we've sprung together a lot of thoughts. Some issues have cropped up, some suggestions have been given. It will take us time to weave together into a decent tarmac for the affordable housing as an infrastructure to take off. But before I conclude, I just want to have two quick answers to you. You have stated mission that you want to deliver 1 million homes. By when? And when can it be 10 million?
2030. And we plan to do that by partnering with 20 developers across 20 cities.
Thank you. This is all from us here, guys. If there are any questions, please, my request to each one of you once again, please keep your questions brief. Ask questions.
Not
comments and suggestions, we'll take it off the floor.
Hello, sir. This is Nikunj Patel from Affordable Housing. No offense to the big players, but I feel that now all FDI are interested into affordability. I didn't knew before. Sir, my question is, how do we get in connect to these FDI funds? Till today, I didn't knew that this kind of funds are available and the FDI are interested in us.
You want to handle that?
Sir, one. What is the paperwork and the time frame?
Okay. It depends on what you mean by FDI. There are various flavors of FDI. You got development finance institutions, you got private equity shops, you got HNIs, there's like a whole host of people out there. The fact is there is genuine interest in affordable housing, right, from various investors because thanks to all the policy incentives from the government. But then if you want to reach out to development finance institutions, for them governance is the biggest hurdle, right? You need to be seen to be clean and that's very difficult to demonstrate. Yeah. So you may be better off taking money from an institution which is backed by development finance institutions. So you're going to be a couple of steps removed, yeah. But it is just a matter of time. Look, HDFC has raised $1 billion for affordable housing. Arthaveda's got $250 million for affordable housing. We are raising money for affordable housing as Brick Eagle. So there are a lot of institutions which are actually sprouting today to back affordable housing developers, and you just need to go to one of these.
Sir, I'm Ram Bhatia from Builders Association. Affordable housing, according to me, is a myth. Today, if we want to plan affordable housing, whether in urban, semi-urban, or Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, first and foremost is, even if FDI or funding is available, the cost of the land. Affordable housing can be for urban or semi-urban, or Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3, reachable by transport. If we want to see the land cost, even in MMR, today the selling price in MMR, minimum is 4,000 to 5,000 rupees a square foot. Cost of construction is not less than 1,500 to 2,000 depending upon the corruption and other factors. Where and how and when affordable housing will start to even have 5 lakh houses in 2020 or 22. I do not know. Some affordable housing, you say Ranjangaon, nobody takers.
Sir, what's the
Because
question? Sir, can you please be sharp on a question?
I want to know how can we start affordable housing and where the persons who are buying the house have got transport facility, number one. Number two, somebody was talking, each one of you has given a very valid point of the problems of affordable housing about precast housing not available, new technology not come, European model cannot be adopted and all that, and rental model cannot be adopted. Where is the technology for low-cost housing?
Yeah, just pause, sir. Mohan, you want to tackle that?
Yeah, I think, you possibly taken on some very extreme examples of maybe MMR region and so on in terms of cost of land. I mean, you would be surprised today that in a place like Hyderabad, okay, I can go and purchase an apartment complex, purchase an apartment in a complex for maybe 2,000, 3,000 rupees a square foot. Okay, it's not unheard of, right? So you would be surprised that, ultimately affordable housing is fairly related to the economics in a city. Okay, if there are jobs created, there will be housing which will come up to take care of that. The problem with Bombay is that Bombay has exploded beyond everybody's belief, So Bombay is always a difficult city to argue anything about. Okay, there are a lot of other cities around India where affordable housing is still possible. Provided they create the right economic opportunities, people will come and relocate themselves over there. So I don't think it's such a pipe dream either. In fact, I was just telling my co-panelists, just 2 days back, I met someone coming from a small town in Rajasthan, which is a textile hub. And he was telling me that he's constructing affordable housing in that whole place. People come from outside, from various other points of Rajasthan over there to get themselves employed in the textile hub. And he constructs, 1+1 kind of tenements for people to, own. And in fact, lease one floor out also. So that's affordable housing, 7-8 lakh rupees per house.
May I take a minute to add?
Sure.
See, affordable housing is an abused word. Nobody knows what it means anymore because even the government has 5 different definitions for affordable housing. But then let me give you my perspective. Affordable housing is small format housing, okay? 300 square feet home, 600 square feet home is affordable. It's the same idea as putting shampoo in sachet, right? 200 rupee bottle, not many people can afford. 2 rupee sachet, everybody can afford. Okay, if you make small format homes and make it livable, it becomes affordable in any given location because the price per square foot is a market-driven price.
Take one last question.
Yeah, my question is, what is the impact, what will be the impact of RERA in affordable housing, and will affordable housing sustain the RERA impact?
RERA is extremely good for customers because a lot of developers, especially in this sector, were taking money and not delivering. It protects customers. But on the other side, what it also means is the funding requirement for affordable housing has just gone up 5-fold. Okay, so the onus is on us to find more money for developers because now they can't do any hanky-panky.
Thank you. I think this has been quite an interactive, good process. Gentlemen, thank you all for your time and for your comments. And I'm sure there's no solutions here, ready-made solutions here, but we'll have to keep at these points, spin something together. It requires a multi-pronged strategy, working on the institutional framework, working on actually creating an eco-environment where affordable houses can be developed. And it's something that is going to be a long haul. It's not an easy task. FDI not easily going to happen, and local debt is also quite a challenge. With that note, thank you, everybody.
Thanks to the chair.
Thank you very much. Let's have our panel members please remain on the stage. I'd like to invite Mr. Sukesh Jamwar to please come forward and present a token of gratitude to all of our panel members as well. And ladies and gentlemen, please note, we are directly starting with our next session. Tea and coffee will be served inside. We have a special address lined up for all of you, so please stay tuned. Meanwhile, please keep those tweets coming using #ETLandSummit.